Right now, our property tax increases are capped at 1% a year. That's the most they can go up without a vote of the people. And that was something that voters passed via initiative 20-something years ago. So it's something voters wanted. Hey, you can't just raise our property taxes at will without asking our permission. So the law that they're now trying to pass is to lift that cap without any limit. Basically, they're going to tie property tax increases to population growth and the rate of inflation. So you could have 8, 9, 10% property tax increases every year, and the impact of that is going to be obvious. So they can pay for things like laser hair removal for transgender inmates, but I digress. So the impact of that is going to be obvious. I mean, there are already people who are having a hard time living here. It's become very unaffordable because of all these things Democrats pass, even though they want to blame it on other stuff. So this is going to hurt the elderly, it's going to hurt the low income, and it's going to make home ownership completely unattainable. So I couldn't help but notice there's 43,000 people who took the time to sign in pro or con, with, of course, the vast majority of them signing in opposed to this property tax increase. So then the Democrats allow testimony from the public, and of course they control basically who gets to testify. So even though this is like a 90-something% issue, they kind of split it equally. So you hear from people who are in support of it and people who are opposed to it. It became very obvious when watching this testimony where that division was. Regular, hardworking people were the ones who were opposed to it. And the ones who showed up in Olympia to testify in favor of hiking your property taxes without fail, these were the special interest groups who benefit from that money and politicians who have already come up with ways to spend it.
My name is John DeRoos, and I'm the Chief of Police for the Everett Police Department. I'm here today on behalf of the City of Everett testifying in support of Senate Bill 5798.
My name is Lisa Janicki. I'm a Skagit County Commissioner, and I'm here in support of 5798.
My name is Heidi Eisenhower, a County Commissioner from Jefferson County. I'm here today to support Senate Bill 5798.
My name is Aaron Yard, and I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Building Changes. I'm submitting this testimony in support of 5798.
For the record, my name is Brian Rains, and I serve as the Chief Executive Officer for Rural Resources Community Action.
My name is Hunter George. I'm the Government Relations Officer for the Metropolitan Park District of Tacoma.
Thank you. My name is Brennan Blue, Fire Chief for the City of Vancouver.
Good evening. I'm Snohomish County Executive Dave Summers, here in support of Senate Bill 5798.
I'm Julie Salvi with the Washington Education Association, testifying pro.
I'm the General Counsel with Washington State Council of County and City Employees, AFSCME Council 2. I'm here today to sign in pro.
My name is Kathleen Koch, and I am representing the City of Connell.
My name is Molly Gilbert, and I'm an investigator at the King County Department of Public Defense, and I am in strong support of Senate Bill 5798.
My name is John Thunheim. I'm the prosecuting attorney here in Thurston County.
I'm King County Sheriff Patty Cole-Tyndall, testifying in support of Senate Bill 5798 on behalf of King County and public safety.
Yeah. So without fail, the people who were in support of it are people who, like the Public Defenders Association, well, like, we need to raise people's property taxes so we can continue to defend criminals. And then people who are mayors, heads of agencies, who, look, they might have legitimate reasons why they think they need more money. Whether it's law enforcement or whether it's to, for a city to revamp sidewalks or whatever it is, they might have legitimate reasons to believe that they need more money, and the best way for them to get more money is to increase your property taxes. What I would point out is they can already do that. They just have to ask your permission. If the reasons they need more property taxes are that justifiable, they can come to you and ask you. I mean, in King County, you heard from the sheriff there? Okay, if you need more money in King County, of all places, to better patrol the county, you can put that on the ballot for voters and ask them for more money for public safety. Nothing is stopping you from doing that. The thing is, they want to cut out the middleman, the voters, and they just want to willy-nilly increase property taxes. So, of course, the special interests and the government officials who don't want to ask the voters, they just want money, 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 and they don't care what the impact is. None of them are in there like, we know this is really tough, and we know this is a really unaffordable time to be living in Washington State, and oh my gosh, this sucks. Let me make the best possible pitch for you. No, it's like, give us more of your money. without us having to ask voters to take a vote. On the flip side, the stories of the people who actually got a chance to testify, who are opposed to it, were deeply personal and explained very well the real-world implications of allowing these property tax increases to take effect.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to testify. We live in Vancouver, Washington, and we are retired. And we're living in the house that we raised our children in. And we've lived here for more than 45 years. As the taxes have gone up a lot on us because of this housing values going up. And we're relying on our current limited income and its fixed income. So we're worried that if we suddenly find that our property taxes are going up 4% a year instead of 1% a year, 4% a year for 10 years is 40%. We have a fixed income and we won't be able to afford that. We'll be taxed out of our house and we'll have to sell it. We think that's unfair and we urge that you vote against this tax, 5798.
Thank you, Joe. Lori, did you want to say anything separately?
No.
Okay.
We put our thoughts together. Thank you.
And so efficient with your time. Thank you so much.
I loved that couple so much because you can tell those are two people who would rather be doing anything else, who aren't used to testifying in Olympia, who are just going through a difficult situation where they're going to have to, 45 years they've lived in that home. 45 years, they've raised their kids there. So we're going to stick it to a family that's called this state home and the same house for 45 years because our cities and our county and our state fail to budget. Really? And I mean, who's standing up for them? They've got to be at this committee hearing standing up for themselves because the majority party is not standing up for people like that couple. They're looking out for the interests of the Defenders Association. They're looking out for the interests of all the special interest groups who they've promised money to, who are going to do X, Y, Z, just fat on the government, and not a couple like that. I mean, to me, that's so easy. And that wasn't the only personal story, certainly, that was allowed to testify yesterday. But there was more than 40,000 people who signed in opposed to these tax increases. And I have to imagine that a lot of them have a story very similar to that. Honestly, it pains me. That's what we're doing to a couple that's called this state home for 45 years and raised their kids here. We're going to tax them out of their home to pay for nonsense like laser hair removal for transgender inmates. And then when we point out that that's nonsense, we get the Democrats who are like, shame on you for saying that on Trans Day of Visibility. And that's racist and that's transphobic and all it is. You guys are absolutely full of shit. It's so unreal at this point. It should be such an easy decision for them to say, we can't do this to families. We have to find places to cut. We have to find other ways. But they won't do it. They don't care. It could be 1 million people who sign in con. If Democrats want to do it, they're just going to do it. And why wouldn't they? They keep getting sent back to Olympia to do stuff just like that. I thought it was a really powerful moment. Senator Gildon, who's a Republican, he actually had all of the whole, well, I'll just let him show you, but a big stack of papers to represent the people who had signed in opposed to this bill but weren't able to actually be there to testify.
One of the things that I've noticed about this particular bill is the large amount of input that we've received from the public. And I've got here a list of all of the people who have signed in against this particular bill. And I'm just curious, I see 43,153 people who have signed in against it, which is about 95%. Have we ever seen anything of this magnitude before?
I don't believe so. If I recall, there is a bill 1163 from this year related to firearms that had about 8,200 or 8,300 signed in opposition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next closest example is like around 10,000. 43,000 took the time to sign in and register their opposition to this. So we asked Senator Chris Gildon not only to come on to talk about this hearing yesterday from sort of his perspective in the minority party again, and that elections have consequences, and they can sit there and he can, show the overwhelming opposition to this. But at the end of the day, if Democrats want to pass something, they're going to pass it. But Senator Gildon was also obviously on the Senate floor on Saturday when Senate Democrats pushed through their largest package of tax increases in state history. So we discussed that with him as well. Senator Gildon, welcome to Undivided.
Well, thank you for having me, Brandi. I'm glad to be here.
You get any angry tweets at you or emails about killing a whole tree?
They brought the print-offs to me yesterday. So for folks who may not realize, this was over 43,000 people who signed in against the property tax bill just yesterday.
Wow.
And so we brought that in because I wanted to make sure that everyone knew the level of backlash that this bill was facing.
Yeah, and I think if not for that, it's not always obvious because you'll have these hearings and honestly, usually the number of people who sign in against some of these Democratic proposals far outnumbers the people who sign in favor of it, as was the case here. I mean, overwhelmingly. But then they kind of give equal time at the public hearing to the pro and the con. Is there a rationale for that? Because that always kind of bothered me. Like if you've got 43,000 people who are opposed to something and 1,000 who are in favor of it, why do those two sides get equal time at a hearing?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that depends on the chair. So what they do a lot of times with the controversial bills is they'll hold the most controversial bill until the end of the committee hearing. They'll stack it with 4 or 5 non-controversial bills, then do the controversial bill at the end, and then, like you say, give equal time to both sides, even though it's so skewed.
Yeah. For you, I mean, there was definitely some, we played on the show today, some of the more powerful, I think, testimony. But what do you think from the testimony you heard is the most effective in sort of arguing about the negative consequences of this property tax increase?
Well, I think it's the same arguments that you've heard time and time again is how this is going to affect the normal, everyday, middle-class person in our state. I think it's very interesting to look at the Senate Democrats' proposal because on one hand, you have people coming in saying, please support this wealth tax or this jobs tax, which is a very progressive, make the rich pay their fair share. But then on the backside, they've got this property tax waiting that's going to affect everyone, and it's a very regressive tax. So it's just been interesting watching all of this, Brandi, because they have the push for progressive taxes, and then all of a sudden the push for regressive taxes. And then with the budget at large, they have this push to raise $21 billion in new taxes, but then to reduce the sales tax by 0.5%. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Or they have this push to give $4 billion of pay raises to state employees and then put those same state employees on furlough to achieve savings. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, with the sales tax thing, and you can tell me if you think I'm off base, it seems like it's just put there, it's very nominal, obviously, in comparison to the increases that people are going to face at the gas pump with the gas tax increase and the property tax increases. I feel like it's so they can say, we're cutting the sales tax without like getting into the dirty details of it. I mean, do you think that's why it's there?
Well, history will prove me right or wrong, but I think this is pure window dressing. I don't think they have any intent of actually passing this sales tax reduction. I think it's there to get a few headlines and to get pressure off of some of the other taxes that they're trying to pass.
Yeah. So what ultimately, just a public hearing, there was no vote in the committee on this property tax?
No, we had the public hearing yesterday on the package of tax bills, a total of about $21 billion worth of taxes that they were proposing yesterday that we heard. Incredible amount of public participation. I think over 500 people signed in to testify either for or against, largely against all of these tax increases. And then we'll see when they want to bring them out of committee because it still has to get voted out of Ways and Means Committee. And then it has to go to the floor for a vote off of the Senate at large. I think right now the Democrats are probably getting together. So the Senate has passed a version of the budget. The House just last night, a little after midnight, April 1st, which is appropriate, passed their version of the budget. So now they've got to get together and figure out how to combine into one budget, an identical budget for both the House and the Senate. And within that, they're going to have to figure out what level of spending that they want to have, which will dictate how much taxes that they're going to levy on you and I.
Yeah, I think what confuses me, and you can maybe just explain it in a simple procedural way. You know, on Saturday, you guys were on the floor of the Senate and Democrats voted to pass their version of the budget. But then you're still hearing in committee some of the key components of that budget, like the tax increases. So I guess how can you pass a budget when the individual taxes associated with that budget haven't passed?
Yeah, it's crazy. So they spent the money before they actually earned it.
Yeah.
Right? They're doing everything backwards this year. I think the more appropriate and open, transparent way to do it is you pass the revenue before you pass the budget. I mean, you wouldn't do that in your household budget. You wouldn't go out and say, hey, I'm going to spend all of this money, and then I'm going to go figure out how to make the money for it.
Then I'm going to go apply for jobs, right?
I'm going to go apply for a job after I've spent the money.
Yeah, I thought it was weird.
Everything about this has been weird, Brandi, I've got to say. And the bad thing about it is, as you well know, and probably all of your viewers know, is Senate Republicans have offered a proposal, a sensible proposal that had no taxes, no cuts to services, and it still fully funded all of our state's needs. So we offered that as an amendment on Saturday during our budget debate. It was defeated by the majority Democrats. So this really comes down to a choice in my mind, because if they agree with everything that was in my budget proposal or not, it was proof of the concept that it can be done, right? So they don't have to agree with everything, but the concept is solid. So it comes down to a choice of values. So we have a lot of Democrats who like to say that they are in favor of affordability. Well, I've got to say, if they pass a budget that's relying on, I don't care what the number is, 10, 12, 15, $21 billion worth of new taxes, whatever it is, they can never again say that they favor affordability. And if they do come out and try to say they favor affordability after passing taxes unnecessarily on people across our state, you and I, we've got to throw the BS flag and call them out, because you cannot stand for affordability and unnecessary taxes. Two separate things.
Yeah, and then you throw rent control in there, like, oh, we're worried about high rents, so we're going to do increased property taxes, rent control. It's like they choose to not see the impact that will have.
Well, and nobody's talking about this, but they want to blow the cap off of the amount that your property taxes can go up every year, and then they want to put a cap on the amount that rent can go up. How do those two live over time in unison? They can't.
No. One more thing I want to ask you, and I don't know to the extent that you're willing to talk about who's trying to get your ear in the wings, but I have heard that representatives from Microsoft and Amazon and other major employers have been down in Olympia trying to dissuade Democrats from the increased B&O tax and from expanding Seattle's failed payroll tax statewide. There's been quite a bit of pushback. I mean, we saw in Seattle this past week, the mayor came out and said, we've lost thousands of jobs over our payroll tax. The revenue collected from it is $47 million less than expected in 2024. So now we're in a pretty bad budget situation because that is not manifesting. So I guess given that news out of Seattle, that this has failed in Seattle, is there any willingness, you think, from Democrats and, you know, the haunting of the halls from big tech and major employers, is there any willingness from them that you've seen to back away from either of those proposals?
We'll see what they do. I'm curious, you know, because we have really 4 mega taxes on the table right now. Governor Ferguson is scheduled to come out with a press conference, I think, at 1 o'clock today. I'm not sure what he's going to talk about, but if I were to guess, I think that he would come out and say that he is not in favor of the wealth tax or the jobs tax, because they're just ridiculous. Which leaves the other 2 taxes on the table are the B&O tax and the property tax. So depending on what the legislative Democrats do, you know, that's the menu of options that they have. And I'll tell you, as far as I'm concerned, some of those rich companies and the rich people, If they don't want to pay the wealth tax or the jobs tax, they're capable of defending themselves. I'm going to stand as a wall against property taxes because that affects every single person in my district and everyone in our state, whether they're owners or renters. I will stand against the rising tide of demands for higher property taxes. And I've got to say, being in a 30-19 minority down here in Olympia, there's a lot of tide and a lot of water that's moving in, and 19 Republicans, we can't stop it all on our own. So that's why it was so refreshing last night to have over 43,000 Washingtonians join us in that wall to stem the tide. And that's what it's going to take throughout the rest of the session to make a difference. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone who signed in against that property tax, because it matters.
Yeah, amen. So we'll see what happens with those. We could go on and on forever, because now I'm worried if they don't pursue the business taxes, well, that blows a big hole in their budget. And I'm worried that that's going to fall even further on the middle class. So I don't know what their plan is. I guess we'll see what the governor has to say at 1. Senator Kruse Gildon, we appreciate it.
Hey,
Recycle those papers, okay?
I think I'm going to put a ribbon on it and a nice little note and have it delivered to Senator Frame. So.
I love that. Please do that, okay?
All right.
Please do that. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That'd be a funny idea. Senator Noel Frame, the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. So I thought she did a good job with handling public testimony yesterday, although you always like to have more people have the opportunity to speak in front of the committee. So a lot going on with taxes. It's all just absolutely depressing.